Okay, good afternoon. I'm very happy and honored to be here. First of all, a huge thanks to the Legnica Art Gallery team. Without your patience and help, there would be no rock stars live in Legnica. And the festival Silver, without any doubt, is one of the most relevant and leading events for contemporary jewelry in Europe. It is incredible what you people realize every year again. So a huge thank you for that. Yes, applause, please. Yeah, but there is something more to be said about commitment. Legnica is a living example of how culture can be nurtured and spread to be part of society. And this can be done because of all the support of the city of Legnica and the ministry, the Polish Ministry of Culture. They are, among others, the most important facilitators of this wonderful event. And I do not mean only money, money is important, but I also mean the support. So congratulations to Legnica and to Poland for having politicians, which is not naturally these days, for having politicians that support our field of contemporary jewelry and employ such a fine organization as the Legnica Gallery of Art. So thank you to the local and national politicians for enabling this. This is not automatically done, as we know, these days. So, after an inspiring lecture of this morning, I hope to make a small, almost 30 minutes contribution to the topic of wow effect. My name is Theo Smeets. I was born in the Netherlands 61 years ago, and I am not a rock star. Since '98, I work at the campus of gemstones and jewelry, where the rock stars come from. So in the next 30 minutes, I will tell you the story of how the stones returned to contemporary jewelry after the European so-called jewelry authors abandoned gemstones. And what do I mean when I say they abandoned gemstones? Let's have a short look at work of the old masters of contemporary jewelry that kicked out the precious stones as they kicked out the precious metal. Holland, UK, Austria, Switzerland, Slovakia, Italy, Spain, and there were many, many more. No stones whatsoever. If these authors needed colors, they took paint or enamel. And all these men have been very, very influential. As in art, men dominated the field for a long time, and they decided not to use stones, but to look for content otherwise. There are some exceptions. Schobinger, 1986, 1987, 1988, and because his works are such a delight, 1990, malachite, rock crystal, and copper. His iconic jewelry became inspiration for lots of colleagues. But apart from Schobinger, there have been mostly women that understood the essence of the material stone, and they kept working with it. And when I say working with stone, I do not just mean the classical setting of pre-cut stones as we see it here. I mean the more integrative and sculptural work on the stone beyond bling bling and beyond specks of color. So stones have never been completely away from the jewelry art scene. They might have been a bit forgotten for a while, but the younger generation, Tarja Tupan and Julia Kunnap, who graduated in 2003 with this concept of fluid stones. Also later Gijs Bakker discovered stones finally and came up with this at the end of the first decade of this century. So also men started to use stone in contemporary art. Here are two nice faces made by David Biemann. So, apart from the second half of the last century, at almost any time in history, gemstones have been present. And the domination of the precious stone and precious metal rejecting man has passed. Today things look different again. Stones are everywhere. But first let's see where they come from. This is where our story starts. Everything is liquid, incredible temperatures. Slowly things are cooling down, amazing forms emerging and solidifying to stone. Mountains emerge to finally crumble and taken by the river to the sea. Those proud giants grinded down to sand on the beach, waiting to be turned into concrete, of which we're not going to speak because we do not consider this stone. This is stone. The use of stone is mostly somehow connected to time. The pyramids of Gizeh were built for eternity, but they appear to be timeless, even if they appear to be timeless and indestructible, like the mountains. They crumble to dust, because time is relative. To our human eyes, stone is infinite and suitable for eternity. This was made out of one huge block of basalt with bronze tools only. Iron and steel came later, imagine. There is almost no religion that doesn't make use of stones to somehow incorporate divinity, and at the same time to make their adepts humble by pointing out how small they are. Often stones are central elements of religious rituals and loaded with sacred meanings and powers. Here is the Kaaba in Mecca. To the east is the black corner Hajar al-Aswad, I hope I pronounced this correctly, named after the black stone that is placed there at about a height of 1.5 meters. It serves as the starting point, or the tawaf, the ritual circumambulation of the Kaaba, circulating against the clock-round stone. Muslims believe that the stone was originally white and turned black due to the sins of the people who touched it. Also, other religions have been using stone or used stone. The Maya, they sacrificed humans on such one-block altars. The Inca, they killed their victims on this altar, carved directly out of the mountain. And this is the so-called cracked altar in a church in Munich from 2020 out of white Carrara marble. On this altar, the Christians break the body of Christ and drink his blood. Amen. Tombstones on a Jewish graveyard with a beautiful remembrance ritual of putting stones on the top to signalize that the passed away are not forgotten. Moses received the 10 Commandments on Mount Horeb, and they are written not on heavenly paper, but they are engraved in heavy stone tables. I mean, God could have just told Moses, these are the 10 Commandments, or he could have written it in the sky with lightning. No, it must be absolutely clear. These commandments are sacred and valid forever, and therefore they have been carved in stone. It is important to remember it. We do not carve our shopping list in stone. Stone is used for important messages. therefore it is such an interesting material for jewelry with a content. Stone is not only used for important messages, but also for messages of importance. And I'm very happy that Julia already introduced the issue of the crowns. This is the royal state crown on the head of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. It weighs around 1 kilo, so heavy, and Her Majesty will also need some lighter stuff. Here are some of Elizabeth's less weighty crowns and tiaras, but only the ones with gemstones. She has much more. I love them. They hold the middle between jewelry, torture instruments, and symbols of powers. And we find them in almost every culture. This is from Nepal, around 1900. This is Chinese, Ming Dynasty, 16th century. This is the beaded crown made around 1900 for the king of Ikea, an ancient kingdom in Nigeria. Hungarian, medieval. The ruby and diamond crown of Queen Maria Theresa of Bavaria. And coming from the Netherlands, I cannot end this round of messages of importance without the most adorable Queen Maxima. Her Royal Highness is wearing a wonderful diamond and sapphire crown. Admittedly, the central stone is not as big as the Koh-i-Noor from the British, but no one is claiming it back. It is ours. This delicate tiara comes with a lovely pair of earrings and a nice brooch, a bit out of focus here. In fact, this is the Majesty's outfit for official events. It's not bad, huh? On weekdays, our Queen wears more simple stuff, like this. It's the humble set for ordinary weekdays and informal breakfasts. And for all that wealth and luxury, guys like this one risk their life every day again. And we must be aware that these little rocks also finance a different kind of rulers. These are the soldiers of the Fiat Cobra warlords from Congo. There are lots of gemstones, not only diamonds, that are being used to finance the violence of murderous dictators. Russia is in fact one of the biggest miners, and I haven't heard Mr. Trump about tariffs on Russian stones. This picture shows Mir, the world's largest gemstone mine. And as to the scale of this crater, this little white dot over there turns out to be a full-grown bus. Yeah. The mine is about 500 meters deep, and it is over 1.2 kilometers wide. It is one of the largest man-made holes, and it was made for one reason only, for this. And for every carat of diamond, you need to move 250 tons of earth. And 250 tons is the equivalent of 250 elephants for every carat. Imagine the weight of 250 elephants on your finger. After the stones have been mined and sorted, they need to be cut. And that is where we finally come to. Here we are at one of the local stone traders in Idar-Oberstein. You see a box with stones from all over the world. Gemstones, rough stones, in any color, form, preciosity and quantity. Here are some bigger pieces, imported from almost every continent. And still some nice stones are found here locally, mainly amethyst and agates, like this moss agate. In earlier days, this kind of stuff was being made out in such happy places like this watermill, where stone workers were lying on their bellies the whole day, pushing hard enough for the stones to be cut, which of course ruined their backs. And in those early days, most of the stone cutters were farmers. So in summer they worked the fields, they found the stones, and in winter they went into the mills to cut the stones. but the water was so icy in winter that they all got arthritis. In Idar, most stones are not sold per carat, but per kilo. Here in this company, the stones are sorted and stored in old oil drums, or crates, or just on the ground in big heaps. You can buy a kilo, for instance, of rock quartz for such low prices as 9 euros per kilo. Here on the right you see 80 euros per kilo, and on the left 185 euros per kilo. That's 19 kilos, so the rock on the left side will cost you 3,500 euros. This one has 1,420 kilos, and it has a value of about 50,000 euros. We borrowed it for a fair, and we had a special insurance to take care that it didn't damage. Idar-Oberstein looks like this. And since most of you, I guess, have never been in the capital of the gemstones, I will take you on a short tour through this wonderful city. But maybe first of all, where is Idar-Oberstein situated? It is in the middle of Western Europe, at about 500 kilometers, 3 major cities, Amsterdam, Paris and Munich. About 800 kilometers we have Florence, Bristol and Legnica. And so we are exactly in the middle of Warsaw, Bilbao and Dublin. In fact, Idar-Oberstein is in the middle of everything. And when you take a look at the world, standing in Idar-Oberstein, the absolute and undisputed belly button of the world, our whole planet is a globe made out of gemstones. So everywhere on our planet there is stone, and there is stone from everywhere in Idar-Oberstein. You can find it in our wonderful tourist shopping area, where lots of things are sold that are not made in Idar-Oberstein, but in Hong Kong and in China and in India and in South America, everywhere where production costs are lower. But still there is a lot of gemstone business going on in Idar-Oberstein. You will find in every street stone cutters and traders, engravers, the National German Gemstone Museum. There are even gemstones in the local fountain and the roundabout in the center of Idar, which some Idar-Oberstein aborigines, they consider this art. We have birds and boats, since there used to be a nice little river in the Oberstein part of the city. Here an old painting from 1875. The horses in the painting were of course replaced by cars in the middle of the last century, and to find a solution for the permanent traffic jams, a bridge was planned. A bridge not crossing the river, but covering the river. So from one end of the city to the other end of the city, a lid has been put on the river. It is not a nice stone bridge, as you might expect in the capital of the gemstones. It is in fact a huge, ugly concrete monster of about 2 kilometers length. So now there is a highway in the middle of Idar-Oberstein. Let's go back to the gemstones. As we've just seen, there is a good thing, a good sense for doing, as we have just seen, there is a good sense for doing things at the right time. In Idar-Oberstein, it is always 12:05. This incredible work of art was made from a simple stone slab. You only need to drill a hole in the middle, screw the clockwork on, glue on the ditches, put it on a stand, and you have this wonderful artwork. Idar-Oberstein has flooded the world with this kind of stuff. But also this, from which the citizens of Idar-Oberstein have been living quite comfortably in the last 300 years. That is, the company owners have been living quite well. The workers were highly qualified, but very poor. So you might understand by now, in Idar-Oberstein there is a monoculture of gemstones. Faceted ones like this, but also engravings like these are produced in Idar-Oberstein, and they show a remarkable level of craftsmanship. Idar-Oberstein became a euphemism for gemstones. However, in the 80s, business was going down. So for the young ones that are in the 80s of the last century, this is now like 45 years ago, a euphemism for gemstones. Business going down, and it was necessary to come up with something new. Somebody came up with the idea for a university for gemstones and jewelry. And so our campus was founded in 1986 and was expected to solve any problem that the industry had at that time, and also all the problems for all times to come, which went, of course, completely wrong, but there we were. Now, almost 35 years later, fine art courses in gemstone and jewelry are offered, and as Faustina already said, it is the only place on the entire planet where you first can study a bachelor in gemstones, and after that a master with a focus on gemstones. As the finale of this presentation, I prepared, as I always do, a silent slideshow of students and graduates' pieces. And I was really happy with the selection. But as I rehearsed my presentation last week, I had the feeling that I somehow was missing the point. And as I looked again and again at all these wonderful jewelry images, other images were coming to me as well. Images like this one. Our world is not nice, not friendly, not warm, and not empathic. And again, there is war in Europe. I remember in 1992, I was making my graduation work in Amsterdam at the Rietveld Academie. There was a war going on the Balkan. And while making these pieces, I was confronted with unbearable images back then, 1992, on the Balkan. Today, 25, again, unbearable images from the Ukraine. You all know them. How to make jewelry. 1992, I was sitting at my bench working on my graduation, at the same time asking myself, what the hell am I doing here? Why don't I go and fight, or at least help the wounded, or bake bread? Do something useful instead of making jewelry. Of all things that can be done in a meaningful and useful life, jewelry. 1992 was also the time where the Amsterdam police ended the squats, the occupying of empty houses, with lots of violence on both sides. Stones, throwing stones. I cannot make this image unseen. It has been burning in my mind for a long time, and suddenly a few nights ago, preparing this PowerPoint, something made click. So I redrafted the last part of my paper for today. I took old and new works of the students and graduates, put them in a random order, and I connected them to the news flashes of today and of the last few years, images that are parts of our lives. We make the personal objects of our times. And often, the real meaning of the works is on a deeper level as what we see. This is our artistic contribution to our culture. We are storytellers. We make the personal objects of our time. We do this as comments, as amulets, as psychological defense. Most of the jewelry works I have showed here are not intended to be connected to the images as I did here in this show. Some pictures have been made before the connected pictures, some works have been made before the connected pictures became news. And unfortunately, such dramatic images are always available in every society. And as jewelry makers, it is our task to tell the stories of these images again and again, because we make the identifiers of our time, of our place, and of our societies. Jewelry makers wrap up the actual topic in images, in wearable art, in statements of who we are, statements of where we stand, and statements of why we are. Jewelry makers are storytellers by nature. As storytellers, another task is triggering joy, belief, and the necessary lightness of being. The lightness of being, which is not unbearable at all. Life can even be fun.
Thank you very much, Theo, for this insightful presentation. Do we have any questions on the audience? Oh, we have.
It is not a question. Thank you, Theo, in the name of all jewelry artists.
That was a wonderful talk, one of the best I've seen in a long time. I don't have a question, I have a quote to share with you from Noguchi. He said, "I love the use of stone because it's the most flexible and meaning-impregnated material. The whole world is made of stone. It's as old as the hills. It is our fundament."
Yeah, that is definitely true. But as I told in the beginning, I'm not a rock star, and I did this on purpose. What I have learned in those 25 years in this school is how extremely difficult to work with stones is. One of the companies where I make pictures of all those stones, Mr. Bora, he always says to me, "Herr Smeets, alle Steine sind schön." Mr. Smeets, every stone is beautiful. Yeah. When you make something from metal, you take a piece of sheet that has been milled and you cut it or you saw it. But when you take a stone, you first have to destroy it. When you cut it, you destroy something that is unique and that is always perfect. I've seen lots of stones where in the end I thought, it was better before you started working on it. So there is something special in working with stones, and also because it is this common ground where we stand on. But still, it is not so common as we think, and that is what also gives it this special possibility to put something into, well, I would almost say words, but jewelers don't put things in words. That's why jewelers shouldn't talk on their work, because if they talk too much, they cannot make the work anymore. It's a different language. So stone is indeed a very, very difficult